call them and collect it, as people seem to think.
Yeah, I drove around a little yesterday. I went down to the Grove, the Groovy Grove, and didn't see any protesters or any signs of any type of militia of any kind. Wrestling anyone to the ground? No.
So everybody got tired of the strife.
Right. Yeah. The areas of the curfew are just about 3 blocks downtown. And the number of times I go downtown, and maybe once every 4 years.
Yeah, I hear you.
If I have to go to something down there.
Yeah.
I mean, I have friends that go to Disney Hall, if I have to do jury duty or something, I'll go downtown. But I don't have a annual subscription to Disney Hall.
Yeah. Well, I understand that. I think other than Comic-Con, where I'm downtown for 4 days out of every year, I don't think if I make one trip down there, I'm surprised.
Isn't that Comic-Con at the Long Beach Convention Center? I mean, no,
it's the SDCC, the San Diego Convention Center. Yeah, it's a beautiful building. It's really interesting architecture, which works for me as a photographer because I can use the architecture as background if I'm careful, and I get some really interesting. It's kind of a futuristic looking building, but it's right across from an area called the Gaslamp District, which is kind of the original downtown of small San Diego in its development phase, and so that Gaslamp. Anybody who can't get tickets into the convention for Comic-Con tend to accumulate out there. So there's probably a 10-block by 10-block area that just goes nuts for the entire 4 days of Comic-Con. The bars are just crazy.
Yeah, that's where they gaslight you.
Gas lamp, not gaslight. It's two different things. This one does not have
actually the same thing. It's just a different subject.
Yeah, that's true. Does not have a young Jessica
Gaslight
Fletcher.
Weather about gas lamps in a house.
It's a nice little area down there, though.
Yeah. I've been down there.
I mean, when we first moved here, we went down there for dinner and things like that a few times. But as we settled in.
Balboa Park and
see
the zoo and the Reuben H. Fleet Space Center.
Yeah. We actually have clients, the NAT. I've been doing spots for the NAT, which is the Museum of Natural History down there. And, so we know that area pretty well. Okay. Well, you and me and Harshid and Alex. Looks like
Invisible Alex.
It is summer schedule. Be able to chat about stuff.
Yeah, everyone's out having fun in the summer. I watched a Beach Boys tribute, the Grammys Salute the Beach Boys or whatever it was. They were airing that again after the death of Brian Wilson.
Yeah.
So it was interesting to have new artists. This was done tape before Brian died. Well, most of them were still alive, except for Dennis. And it was interesting seeing current recording stars doing all of their own.
That's been one of the most interesting things. The amount of respect Brian Wilson had among the musician community, the high-end musician community in general, was pretty notable. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a mic check, but that's okay. We assume it's fine.
Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your media and tech-related production questions every single day. Courtney Gooden in Los Angeles, California is our reader today. Courtney, what's our first question?
Thank you, Bill. First up is TJ Asher from Minneapolis, Minnesota. And TJ asks, now that Apple has newer refurbished Mac Studios available, should I go for an M4 Max or M3 Ultra? Is it worth the extra $1,000 to go from 4 to 8 terabyte drive? And the primary use will be a serious photo crunching in Photoshop, Lightroom, and editing in Final Cut Pro. All ports will be used.
I've been there. Alex Lindsay.
I think that the M3 Ultra is probably more than what you need. So I think that the M4 Max is probably going to do a better job for what you have there. As far as the drives go, if you can afford it, I would really look at the 8 terabyte. And the reason is that the read-write speeds are insanely fast on the internal drives. And so it is difficult to get an external drive to do 5 gigs a second. And so, which is pretty much what all these internal drives are running at. So you're going to get 2.5, so you get twice as much. It depends on what the resolution is. If you're doing all 1080p, it won't matter. If you are doing 6K from your Blackmagic camera and you're in Blackmagic RAW and you want to be able to play it back, like 4 or 5 channels of it playing back, you're going to need to have that internal drive be able to hold it. And for some reason, many of my projects sit around 8 terabytes, so 6 to 8 terabytes. And so I think that that's my biggest regret for my studio was that I didn't put a larger drive. I got the minimum, or I got a 1 terabyte drive because I was like, because I generally do everything external. I just didn't know how fast the internal drive was. So I would recommend an M4 Max with the 8 terabyte drive.
You certainly will not be unhappy with that. It's a killer machine. And I find, if you're like me, TJ, the problem is you start out and you don't do projects of great complexity. But when you get the tools to have great complexity, you end up thinking, well, I could just add this and I can add this. A case in point, I'm working on an audio book. And I thought, well, why don't I just videotape myself reading it in case I ever want to play with animation or something like that and see if I can read the lips. In doing so, I turned a project that would have been a couple of 100 gigabytes into one that's about 1.4 terabytes now, and increasing exponentially as I go through it, because as I add graphics and things like that, it's having to render out those graphics or titles and things like that on top of the video footage, which was an afterthought. But it's going to end up being a big, difficult to process thing. Now, my M2 Max chip is doing just fine, and I haven't had any problems. But to Alex's point as well, I have 2 terabytes in this machine. I wish I had 4, and I bet that if I had 4, I would wish I had 8. That's just the nature of the kind of work we all do now. No matter how much you buy, you end up pushing the limits of it after a certain period of time. That's been my experience. Next question.
Next one comes in from Funsak Dorji. He says, hi again, will be planning to build a vMix box with Decklink Quad 2 for 6-camera soccer live stream, replays from 4 inputs, and planning to get a X-Keys XK12 jog and shuttle for controlling the replays. Suggestions?
Alex, do you have some thoughts for him?
Just make sure that the only thing that I'll say is make sure that the PC is powerful enough to handle that many inputs and replays. So you're talking about a pretty beefy machine. It's probably not going to be a laptop.
Cordy Gooden.
Yeah, I'd go for an ROG-approved gaming machine, something with an RTX, like at least if you're going to get the 50 series, a 5070 or 5090, if you can afford it. That should be able to handle all of your vMix stuff well, and you can get it with either 9.9 or Intel or Ryzen 7 or 9 would be good. But anything that the ROG approves, sometimes the Asus makes some good gaming machines, as well as the Alienware from Dell. Take a look at those. All of those should have plenty of room to mount that card inside and plenty of horsepower to power the vMix and drive all your I/O.
Next question.
From Ola A. from Kent in the United Kingdom. I get it straight here. Trying to stream using vMix on a Bossgame M2 mini PC. look with that, 7940HS, connected to an atem Mini Pro, but the camera inputs look fuzzy or blurry. I see a sample video here, and he has a link. Any thoughts on what the issue might be?
Alex is going to try to help you out. Alex?
I downloaded the link. By the way, we would prefer to have not have to download. Just from a security perspective, we prefer not to download stuff. So if you can put things on YouTube or Vimeo or something that we can just kind of open the web page, that'd be better. But I went ahead and did it. We've seen your questions before, so I decided it was safe. Anyway, so but here's the image here. And that looks like a lot more than blurry. So I'm not sure, this is the image, this is the video that I downloaded here. And it looks like you're having, that looks like some kind of capture problem or it's potentially a capture problem or a cable problem is what I'm seeing here. So it doesn't really look fuzzy or blurry to me. It looks like there's something wrong unless you're capturing something else there. Now, what I'm not clear of is that are you streaming from vMix or trying to stream from the atem? So are you trying to send the atem signals into vMix or are you trying to send vMix into the atem? I think it would be atem to vMix typically, but let us know which way you're trying to go and maybe we can try to figure that out.
Thank you for the question. Next question.
Comes in from Minneapolis, Minnesota. TJ Asher asks, in a New York Magazine Vulture article, I guess that's right, everyone is already using AI and hiding it. Lila Shapiro says AI is already entrenched in Hollywood and nobody wants to talk about it. Thoughts? And has a link.
Alex, are you surprised?
It's 100%. People are using it everywhere. Like it is. I mean, when you're talking to people that they're testing it now, no one wants to say anything about it, and they don't want to. But the writers are using it, the producers are using it, the studio execs are using it. Like everybody's using AI for something. Now, some of it is more light in the sense that you have huge numbers of people are using ChatGPT on set to figure something out. Like, what is this? I don't understand why this isn't working or whatever. That doesn't really, I don't think people are worried about that. On the other end of the spectrum, you have executives already talking about leveraging their past, all the entire catalog that they have and using AI to reimagine it. So making a cartoon version of the Matrix that doesn't have any of the R-rated stuff in it, and being able to just pump the ideas, be able to just pump that into an AI processor and come out with something new. I think that's probably a little starry-eyed, but that's what they're doing. I think that the real, and then you have lots of people doing everything in between, and I think everybody is concerned about when you're seeing there's whole studios that are building up that are promising nothing but AI. Like they're just going to build AI films, AI shorts, AI commercials. There's like, I don't know, 8 or 10 of them right now that are pretty big that are happening. They've got a lot of investment, some from Google, some from others. I think the real challenge is going to be that and I've noticed this myself is that something looks really exciting at first, and then it's kind of empty. Like I think we talked about I talked about the stormtroopers a lot last week, but by now I'm like, man. Okay, like they ran out of juice pretty quickly. Like it wasn't like I'm like I could watch Murderbot for every episode every day for the rest of the year because it's just there's a story and it's deep, and I don't think that AI is going to get us to that point immediately. But there's a lot of light, and I think that the problem we're really going to get into is that TikTok and YouTube and many other things may get inundated by AI content, and the problem is that it'll be good for those platforms for a little while, and then it'll kind of fade off because it becomes kind of a monoculture. If you feel like you can't filter it out, I think it's going to be problematic.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, and there was a recent seminar about a week ago by the ASC, the American Society of Cinematographers, held at their clubhouse there, where they streamed a lot of professionals, and it was all on AI in the business. And they had a bunch of sessions using Veo 3, and Google was there demonstrating some stuff. And it was kind of painful to watch, like Dante's top name DPs, Caleb Deschanel, and trying to get an image that they specifically want. I want the camera here and the young guy over here on the left facing the two guys that are going to hold him up on the right with the building in the background. And it took about 30 or 40 goes. Well, no, now the guy's facing the wrong direction. Well, now the camera didn't go. Oh, the camera needs to be in the street. So it was kind of painful to watch, but you have to understand that it takes that many iterations. And I don't know if, something that could have been done simpler with just a simple 3D mock-up, a layout, 3D layout program to lay out your floor plan and your positions where the camera is, where your actors are, to plot your scene, the overview of your scene, to, let's say, plot lighting or plot camera moves, or let everybody know where the actors are going to be in relationship to the camera in the background, so the art department knows where to dress and where not to dress and what to build and what not to build. That's very helpful. I think the first uses of it are already happening now in commercials, because you don't have to have long congruity between shots, and the actors are getting better in the generative AI. And also, I think the visual effects people were in for one of these seminars. And I think the first places where it's going to be used is for previs, generating a lot of previs and looks. And then rig removal, I think, is the next step for AI, because all those tools that were added to Firefly and in the Adobe products for removing things from images right now and covering them up seamlessly with whatever is in the background works pretty well. And I think the mundane task of removing wires and rigs that are supporting actors and stuntmen is going to be the first application of that. They have that already automated to some degree in the VFX industry, but I think they can automate it even more with the AI.
It's a fascinating time. Alex, you wanted to come back in?
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that's going to be really interesting to see is how responsive some of the content is. Now, I know I just talked about being tired of the Stormtroopers, but before I got tired of it, what I was amazed at was watching this. Yeah, last week. But if you look at this, so this is the Stormtroopers and going visit. Vader sends them down to help with the LA riots, right? That's what this is about.
So Vader thought it'd be fun to send us to quell the rebel uprising in downtown LA. Awesome. Dude, they're just peaceful protesters.
So anyway, so you have all this happening here. Greg has become Kenny, so they killed Greg. So, but the point is, the only reason I bring this up now, what he did really well, I realize Stormtroopers are easy because you don't have to get the face right all the time. They all look the same. It's an easy thing to do. But the amount of what that would have cost, most of us in production would have known that little scene would have been $1 million, or more. Like, to design it, it would have taken months. It would have taken all of these other things to put together. And they just did it over a weekend, responding to something that's happening in the news. And when you think about, I agree with Courtney that you're going to see a lot of previs, rig removal. I think set extensions, those kinds of things are going to be something that is something that can be done. I think that the other thing that's going to be really interesting is satire. I think you're going to see, we're already seeing a lot of it, but satire is going to be something that, because now it can be very, very responsive. And I think that all of the things about, I was talking to someone who's doing a lot of this right now, and they were talking about the fact that, well, yeah, it took 30 or 40 revisions, or I think in one case almost 100 revisions for them to get what they wanted out of it. But they said that's still cheaper than the crew. It's it's still I think it cost them a couple $1,000s to do one shot, for it. But they were like, that shot would have been $50,000, to do it some other way. And then I finally got the shot, so I think that that's the thing that you're, that we're going to get into is, regardless of how, I think the thing that's important for people to understand is this isn't just, I type something in. This is a new tool. It's a new paintbrush, and the paintbrush has a lot of colors in it, but it's still someone who has a specific vision that has to whack on it to get it to be exactly what they want. But those tools will get more accurate as we go down the path.
Yeah, and my big concern is just the amount of overall noise there's going to be, because it's not a group or 10 groups or 1,000 groups. It's 100 million people with access to this, which means that every time they hit send, there's another link, another possibility. And so the possibility bin is going to fill up some.
But that's what they said about Photoshop. I mean, I was there. I read the articles. I mean, I was the one making the noise, in Photoshop of suddenly all these kids can build whatever, and people can build whatever magazine they want, and they can do these photos, and no one's going to be able to tell. Like the AI conversation around that is exactly the same thing that we heard in Photoshop. And it's the same thing when YouTube came out. Well, now anyone can post a video, and it is, I think that, everybody's got a pencil, but not everybody can draw. So I think that we're going to have the same thing where I think it's massively available. But I do think that what's going to happen is like anything else, anything that's okay, we'll think is really cool, but our eyes will slowly tighten. This is what always happens. People's eyes will tighten, and the stuff that isn't stepping way above that is going to fall away just because we're not interested anymore. There's too much of it.
I just think that the number of people who were doing this stuff in the 1990s or 1980s like you were versus the number of people who are online thinking they can do generative AI videos now is orders of magnitude larger.
But it's just, it's the same. I mean, there was, a lot of people were pretty upset when the printing press showed up because, number one, a lot of scribes out of business. Number two is suddenly everybody could have their ideas and print them and send them to, that was a huge change in the distribution of ideas. And so these are things that I think that this is just another example of that process. And I think that it's not, because I think about this a lot, and it really is, and I don't know where it's all going to go, but I do think that it's a mistake for us in production to stay away from it for very long because it's, you've got to know exactly how to use it because this is going to be an integral part. It doesn't mean that you won't be doing some of what you're doing before, but you got to stay on that. There's a difference between being like someone who wants to tell a story and someone who wants to make the story, right? And the people who make the story they don't want anything to change because they get paid to make it. People who want to tell the story just want to tell the story. They just want, and they don't care what it takes to tell the story. They're not, the less people, the less things, whatever. They just want to tell the story that they have. And what we're seeing with AI is people who have a vision of something, whether that's, reproductions of the American Revolution or the Bible or stormtroopers. That's still a vision of a story that they wanted to tell. It's a creative vision. Not all the AI is. I've seen people build a lot of AI that just isn't worth watching because it's just like, okay, well, that's not funny, or it's not good, or it's not whatever. So I think it's just a different level of storytellers that's happening.
It's going to be interesting to see how this all shakes out. Don't forget, we're always taking your questions. You can ask questions. You can chat about the questions and vote on them in Mukana. That's our Q&A system. Go to officehours.global/join. Simple as that, officehours.global/join. We'll send you an email. Once you kind of hook yourself up to it, you'll get not only the daily email and the rest of the things that kind of drives this show every day, but you'll also get a chance to vote and make your opinions heard about the questions we have on the show. That's officehours.global/join. Next question.
Next one comes in from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. Paul asked us to discuss the full walkthrough of the Deity Theos DXTX and discuss its major functions and use cases.
Courtney, did you take a look at the DXTX?
I didn't have a chance to play back the whole run through because it just came up here while I was reading. But here's what it looks like. It's a plug-on transmitter and recorder. Yes, it records internally. That will plug onto any microphone, and I think it does phantom power, or it can be plugged onto, like your reporter's dynamic microphones. And one of the neat features it has that many of the other recorders don't have is it has timecode sync. So it'll sync with the Deity timecode Bluetooth transmitters like the one he's holding in his hand there. And you'll see it says timecode sync there on the display. So it will record in sync with timecode, so you could have multiples of these on the set, all a recording and triggered to record with timecode synchronization between multiple tracks. So that would be very handy, and have the timecode jam your camera as well, so you don't need to figure out sync or have to feed a guide track to the camera in order to sync it up later. So that's interesting. It probably has 32-bit float, but I haven't looked at the complete specs, but almost everything is these days.
It does. I took a read through it. Alex, your thoughts?
Yeah, just make sure to buy it overseas. So it is. I don't understand how Deity had it working.
Support the recording in the United States?
Nope. No, it's a Zaxcom. It's got a Zax, which is interesting because the last version of Deity did support local recording in the United States, but according to News Shooter here in this article, it doesn't. They must not have been able to work out a deal with Zaxcom for this one. I don't know why. And so if you're going to buy this, you're probably going to want to try to find an overseas partner. Fortunately, we're a global organization, so you can probably find somebody to get it sent to. Of course, there'll be some kind of, I'm sure, import duties and everything else related to it. But you're probably going to want to not buy it in the U.S. just because you won't be able to have the local record while transmitting. Is I think disabled for U.S. Maybe go to Canada. I guess you can just drive to Canada.
There you go.
We'll get a whole bunch of them sent to Alexander Knight. Have him, and then he can just smuggle them over the border.
Wait a second. They're mad at us. Is the border still open?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to pay those huge tariffs that come.
The thing that I read that was interesting, I was doing a little research on it, and it said that it's a stereo unit in terms of its internal recording, but it's a mono carrier. And the News Shooter article that I read through part of indicated that meant some questions about whether or not you could record full stereo wirelessly from it. It has 2 channels on 2 separate carrier legs. So I think there's more to be looked at. The specs looked very good, and it seemed to me it was around $1,000 retail for the pieces of the puzzle here. Courtney, did you see more than that?
Well, a lot of time I was just going to say, most of those recorders have stereo recording mode, which lets you do a backup channel. In other words, it records the same signal on both channels, but one at a lower reference level. So that's a protection channel, so that in case you go over. But with 32-bit float, you really don't need to worry about that anyway. But if you're recording in 24-bit, because it's not compatible with 32-bit, let's say your post-production timeline, your post-production pipeline doesn't support 32-bit for some reason. You could record with a protection channel on the B channel at a lower level. So it'd be the same signal, but a stereo file.
The other thing that I found interesting was that when I looked on the News Shooter site, the article was very small, but the video link was much longer. So it's just interesting how everybody is assuming that their viewers want more video, less writing. It would have been easier for me today just trying to do some quick research to scan a written thing, but we're not given that as much anymore. So whatever it is, that's how things are going. Next question.
This comes from Funzak Dorji. Hi, panelists. When using vMix, do you use the inbuilt software encoder or a hardware encoder? I recently used a Kiloview G2 encoder from HDMI with external SDI ISO, and it worked great. Was streaming to Restream. Thanks.
Alex?
In general, I always want to have my encoder be a separate computer. That's kind of generally how I approach it. So whether it's vMix or anything else, I usually want the encoder to be a separate appliance. We've had some pretty interesting issues with Kiloviews, or not we have, but people who we ended up doing their work for them later because they used Kiloviews. so thank you, Kiloview. But they melted down a little bit, and so I think that. You want to think about what that external encoder looks like. The advantage of doing vMix is that it's all built in. The disadvantage is that you're going to be using your internal capacity to do the streaming. The advantage of going external is that you're moving that away, but now you deal with the software switchers with a video output from a consumer computer that isn't built for it. I mean, even if you put it together, sometimes the framing isn't perfect, so that's one of the big challenges you have going out of vMix into something else.
Next question.
Comes in from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. Paul asks, what's the funniest ad insertion error you've witnessed during a live stream? And he has a link to something.
This might be interesting. Courtney, have you seen something really weird?
Not funny, but you can't control the juxtaposition because all the streamers are now offering commercial versions like Netflix and Hulu and Disney are offering cheaper subscription models that have ads inserted in them. And of course, they're targeting those ads because they're for your individual viewing only. So a lot of times you will end up with, the thing that really chaps me is when I see 2 ads back to back of the same ad. And that happens all the time because, they're not coordinated between the people that are doing the national buys and the local buys. And if they're trying to saturate local and national, both the ad buyer, it doesn't check to see if it's inserting the same ad into something where that ad has already been scheduled. So you'll see an ad and then you'll see it just repeat right away, or you'll see one ad in between that same 30-second ad you just saw 30 seconds ago. That drives me nuts.
Alex?
I've heard of this thing. They were ads. I remember seeing them sometime a long time ago. Like it's a distant memory. I think sometimes when people ask about them here, I think about them and I go, oh yeah, that was horrible, wasn't it? But yeah, I don't see very many ads anymore. I think that's a whole interesting process, is that some of probably the best consumers have just decided to opt out. And so you have, like for these ads or the targets, because, for me, I have YouTube Premium. I have the YouTube TV lets me skip over things really quickly, and streaming services. And I definitely don't get streaming services with ads because I value my time. So anyway, I think I'd rather just have less streaming services than more. I'd have less streaming services without ads than more streaming services with ads. And so if I don't have the money to do it, which I have decided, I don't want to spend it, I've been slowly deleting streaming services, which I think is becoming the trend. Like there's a lot of concern about the streaming services right now. And part of the pullback is that people are starting to get picky. They're starting to go, well, and the real issue is that the streaming services who are only doing stuff in the middle, that thought a lot of content made a difference, are having more trouble. The streaming services that are doing really the best quality stuff, and the reason for that is that if people are just filling their time, they're filling it with YouTube. They're not filling it with shows. So you have to have a really good show that people want to go to, or you're competing with the beast, which is YouTube, which is just slowly chewing up the entire market.
Yeah, it's a whole new landscape out there. When I was coming up in the industry, in fact, I'll never forget the first day I was at the radio station and I got to the page in the copybook that said, in the event of any national plane crash, pull all advertising for any airline. And so you had to make the decision. If you heard something happened on the morning news, none of those ads would run because they were contextually, they did not want their ad to run near, American Airlines or whomever didn't want their ad to run near the news break. I'm wondering if there's any of that happening now, because it's almost all bots and it's almost all now centralized server feeding these ads in there. And even if you put algorithms in there, is it smart enough yet with the advantage of AI to be able to do things like that? In the event of news that affects our industry that is negative, pull the spots that have to do with our industry. Well, I'm not sure it's quite built to do that now. And so I think a lot of people are going to be very unhappy when the bot puts in the ad you do not want next to your product. And there's a large stream of angry calls and emails up the chain. It's complicated out there now. It's not going to get any easier for a long time. Next question.
Next question comes in from the East Coast, New York City. David Brady asks, looking for a nice, quiet, momentary push-to-talk or push-to-mute button for your XLR mic? Kopul Mutemate-85 is $55 at B&H.
Something else to investigate. I'm on it after the show today. Courtney, what are your thoughts?
No, this is
look at that
big panic button. It doesn't look too quiet. If you slam your hand down on that baby, it has a XLR in, XLR out. It says it works with condenser microphones and, passive dynamic microphones. But one thing to bear in mind, it's that 85 in the number stands for the number of dB that it mutes. So it doesn't do 100% mute. It just drops at 85 dB. So if you cough really loud close to that microphone, you're probably still going to hear it. And it depends on the level that you're working at, of course. But 85 is a lot, but it's not infinity.
Yeah, it'll do no better than my Rolls, which are $55, which have been great. But you're right. That's one of their don't work perfectly because of that. Alex?
Yeah, I think that my concern is, and it's hard for me because I have a really nice one. And so I go, well, it doesn't have this and it doesn't have that. For me, having a light and being able to look at it and knowing where I'm at is important to me. Also the sound, the sound of being, of whatever the click is. And so those are the things that I'd be worried about. And again, I would say Courtney's point of it not being 100% is problematic.
Yeah. Courtney, you want to come back in?
Yeah, I was just going to point out to Alex that you don't need a light because it's momentary. If your hand is not on it, it's not either open or closed. So
that would drive me crazy.
But
maybe shorten my answers. Everyone's like, yeah, you should do that.
Yeah. Next question.
All right, next one comes in from Jack Cannon in Phoenix, Arizona. What's your favorite silent keyboard for use while live streaming or recording, etc.?
Alex, you're pretty keyboard specific. You like certain ones. What do you like in this?
I actually went down this path. There are some glass ones for that I didn't buy because they were just I couldn't get them. I couldn't order it. I actually was willing to pay the $250 or whatever. But there's some for medical that are just glass, and then they don't make any noise. And so I really wanted to try one of those, but I couldn't get. They weren't. I don't know if they've been out. They're out of business or other things. But that's something you can look for. The one that I use the most is my iPad. So I try to jump online with my iPad to type on things because it's got a glass surface and it's not going to make any noise. So that's the other one. And then the other one that I have used occasionally when I need to use my keyboard is this is the Sungwoo. That's very high end Sungwoo silicon keyboard, USB wired, waterproof roll up. And so this makes no noise. So
$20.
It's $20.
You can afford not to buy it.
It makes no noise. You can kind of push down on it, and it works. You're not going to type quickly with it. It's not like a touch typing thing. It's got a little bit of but if you need something that is quiet, that's the quietest keyboard. And I have bought many keyboards to try to do exactly what you're trying to do, Jack. And these are the only options that I've really found, or the glass one that I couldn't find supply of. Maybe they're back in supply. This was a year ago or 2 years ago. This roll up keyboard and my iPad.
Courtney?
Yeah, the problem with that is that you can get, like Alex said, the rubber keyboards that you roll up, and then they have rubber keys on them that you do have some level of detent, but there's no clicking and there's no positive feedback to let you know that that key has actually made contact. So they're sometimes a little iffy. The other thing is with the touchscreen keyboards like the iPad or any touchscreen type device keyboard is you got to look at it. You can't touch type onto it. And if you're live streaming with your mic open, you're supposedly looking at your audience and not down at your keyboard while you type. So, it's kind of a division of attention. And since I touch type, I like to be able to type while looking at the camera. So the touch keyboards are out. The only thing left is an elastomeric keyboard. And they make some keyboards with keys, but this have the little rubber, elastomers underneath, which are not great, but they're really cheap. I used to get them for like $10 when doing TV shows. We would put them in there. Because then the extras couldn't make too much noise with them, and they were pretty cheap. It didn't matter.
Harshid?
I've been down this rabbit hole. Actually, there's a lot of silent switches, so it just depends on what brand. So let's just say you got yourself a Keychron keyboard. They do have switches that are in the silent switch area. What they do is on some of these switches, they'll put a silicone layer underneath the key, and it's lubed. So I have heard it, at least on their recording or the YouTube channel's person's recording, and it was quite silent enough where I barely thought that they were typing. So if you just type in silent keys on YouTube, you'll find a plethora of stuff. Switch and Click is one good YouTuber, by the way.
And don't most keyboards have that little detent on the, F and J keys so that you can at least get your fingers oriented if you're a touch typer and can't see the keyboard at the time? So, I don't know. Jack, good luck. I hope you find a solution to the problem. Next question.
Next one comes in from Viera, Florida. Andy Kokendorfer asked, is anyone planning to watch the B&H Bild Expo talks? If so, which ones? And he has a link there to the agenda.
Hadn't even heard about these. Alex, did you know anything about this?
They're already streaming. Here it is. This is the live main stage. I guess they're streaming to YouTube here, so you can see. We'll click see how many people are watching. Whoops, I got the audio back there. About 200 people watching. It looks like about 200 people in the room as well. So this is, and I think that it's interesting. I don't go to conferences to go to sessions. Even though I speak at the sessions, I usually speak at the sessions because it means I don't have to pay for the hotel or the flight. So I'm happy to put together a good. I mean, obviously, I'm driven to put together a great talk because then they'll call me back. So there's always that. But the reason I go, I don't really go to anybody else's sessions. I'm not going to watch a live stream of sessions. I go to meet people and to go through the expo. And so to me, the meeting people and hanging out with other people, going to the expo and wandering around looking at cool stuff. That's why. And what's interesting is I think that our live streams, because it's hard to do the expo, and you can see us experiment. This is why we're doing so much experimentation around NAB and other things, is because I feel like the value that I really want out of a live stream is to wander around the expo. And we can do little things where we show you things and we go to each booth and we record and we kind of do an interview, but I kind of want something that's a little bit more free floating, that has, the kind of thing that we've been doing at NAB, especially the one we did last year. And so that's what I'm interested in, is trying to figure that out. If they did that from the expo floor, and we looked at this one, at the time, my schedule did not look like it would. I probably could have done this one this week. But at the time when I looked at the schedule, it was not a workable thing to go there. Build is something that this is kind of B&H's version of NAB. Like that, it's kind of, that's where it's much more. It has other things, but it's much more creator driven. B&H has taken a heavy, they see that as a huge part of their business, and so. It's much more creator driven than broadcast driven. NAB is much more broadcast driven than creator driven. And so they both try to do the same thing. I mean, they both cross over, but if you're looking at two big circles, they kind of meet in the middle, but B&H is going towards the creators and NAB is still paying more attention to the broadcasters.
Courtney?
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to look at the video, but they have 5 stages apparently with a different topic on each stage. Here's the agenda. They've got the build stage focusing on interest in photography and content creation. They got a photography stage. They've got a content creation stage. So I guess photography is for still photographers. Content creation is for influencers, strategists, storytellers to grow, monetize, and stand out across every platform. How to be found on YouTube. A filmmaking stage for those that want to be professional filmmakers. Lights, camera, masterclass with filmmakers in the industry. A photo editing stage, so those that want to retouch their photos or do still photography work. I guess that's of interest to a lot of people. And a create and capture stage on capture, shooting, directing, and capturing cinematic short films. I didn't see AI mentioned once in there in any of those stages. That is quite unusual. So that would be interesting. Well, since B&H mostly sells photographic equipment, generative AI probably wouldn't work into their sales, force very easily.
Makes sense. By the way, if you have questions you want to put into the show queue real quick, you can use the QR code or askofficehours.global. Let me pull up the QR code here. That's askofficehours.global. Just type that into any web browser, askofficehours.global. That's going to put you into a quick queue that gets your question into the system. It'll go to our back end folks. They'll take a quick look, make sure it's formed sensibly and follows our rules, which is 1 question per submission, and don't try to make them too comfortable or complicated, and try to make sure that they're phrased so that they can be read aloud on the air. And that gets you in quicker. That's askofficehours.global. Next question.
Next question comes in from Michael Boydnott in Richmond, Virginia. Following up on your separate computer encoder question, how do you set up work specifically? We generally take a capture card in and stream from OBS or vMix. So how do you add another computer?
Alex Lindsay is going to help you here. Alex?
Now, what I will tell you is that usually if I'm using OBS or vMix, I am streaming, and I have used vMix on occasion. I've used both of them in a small amount. I use Mimo Live a lot on the Mac, but when I'm using a software encoder, I have to admit that I don't need a separate computer because I do just stream from whatever I'm encoding from, but I don't use software tools for things that I get paid for. So I use, so that as soon as someone says I'm going to pay you for something, I'm using hardware. So I use hardware switchers and hardware encoders and appliances and everything else. I move to hardware very quickly as soon as checks start getting written. So you'll see me play with a lot of stuff. We are definitely very interested, obviously, in vector in the cloud, and I'm getting my head around that, and we're doing the tests, and we've been able to make most of that stuff work really well. And so we're excited about vector in the cloud. But when it comes to software, I love Mimo Live, and I use it for podcasting and so on and so forth. But those aren't things that we've definitely, with all these software encoders, I've seen, whether it's vMix or OBS or TriCasters or all kinds of other things, I've seen all kinds of little idiosyncrasies that come with software. And so I have a tendency to move to hardware very fast as soon as I'm getting paid. So I don't know as much about how to get it out. Generally, what you're doing is you're going to set your capture card, or a lot of these cards are duo; they go both ways. So you're going to set your output from OBS or vMix. This is my video output. I'm going to send it out there. Then you're going to bring it into a coder of your choice. So we've talked a lot about Magewells, the Epiphan's. We're using more and more Videon encoders. So those are the type of things. For a long time I used a lot of elementals, and so it just depends on what you want to go out to, or another computer. That can be another. It could be another thing. But the key is by having that encoder be something separate. The advantage of having, for instance, cutting in OBS and sending it even to another OBS is that other OBS can have a we'll be right back slide. It can have the video input. You can cut away from something if you need to. So those are some of the advantages there.
Next question.
Next one comes in from Paul Walhus in Austin, Texas. How do systems like Sony Ocellus and Mo-Sys Star Tracker Mini provide real-time camera tracking for AR, VR, or virtual production without recalibration?
And Alex is going to help us. Alex?
Yeah, a lot of these, so the Sony one is pretty basic, and then the Mo-Sys one is probably a little bit more complex, and so they're using typically a transmitter that is a point of interest. Now, oftentimes you have multiple transmitters that do that they're triangulating the position of the camera, but many of these, Mo-Sys has been around a fair bit longer than Sony's. Sony has a mocap system. That mocap system is only, I think, 6 points, and so I don't know if it's, I don't know, it's kind of be good for, I don't know, AR or something, some basic stuff, but it's not a real, and then the Mo-Sys tracker is for cameras typically. So I don't think it's not a mocap there. So, but the main thing is that it's going to have that transmitter. It's going to be, I don't know if it doesn't need, the last Mo-Sys that I used needed to be calibrated every day. So when it's used as doesn't need calibration, this must be an upgrade of it being able to auto calibrate for you. But we definitely needed to calibrate it in the past.
Courtney?
Yeah, I was just kind of looking at it, and I have never seen or used the Sony Ocellus camera tracking system, but according to their little blurb here, it says it uses 5 image sensors to visually track using their SLAM technology. So maybe those sensors are all positioned within one physical device. So it knows the precise distance between each of those sensors, and it can calculate positions in 3D in space by triangulation from those 5 sensors fast enough to do VR tracking. Maybe that's how it works. That's my guess. But it shouldn't need recalibration if those things are built into a, aluminum matrix or something that's not going to move around, so that you're not going to change the distances between the sensors. That way you wouldn't have to recalibrate it.
Next question.
Comes in from Omar Gadan in Orange County, California. Teradek Prism or LiveU Solo Pro or something else need a new bonding encoder. Don't need to connect to a LiveU decoder, just encode RTMP or SRT.
Fortunately, Alex has a lot of experience with these things. Alex?
Yeah, from an encoder perspective, I probably, if I was going to pick between the LiveU Solo Pro and the Teradek Prism, I'd pick the Teradek Prism because it's a 12G 10-bit encoder, so you're going to have a lot more headroom there. If you're getting the Flex MK2, which is that's the one that I've tested in the past. So, and so I've tested both of those. We use a larger LiveU backpack. Remember that the larger LiveU backpack, which is a lot more expensive, can just stream to the cloud. You don't need to send it to a decoder. We send it to a decoder, but you don't have to. So all the LiveUs have the LiveU cloud that you can go to and then send from there. But I think that the Teradek has, again, I'm looking at the Teradek Prism pretty hard because of I'm looking for something that's compact that does 10-bit. So that's the big thing. And 12G to 10-bit is something that I'm looking for, and that's probably the least expensive solution to do that. As far as bonding goes, I would really just use a PEP-Link. So I really think that a PEP-Link would make more sense for you as far as the bonding process. So anyway, so I think that I wouldn't try to, unless you're going to use a LiveU, which I think is the best way to do bonding, LiveU LU800 or above. Unless you're going to use that, I would get a PEP-Link and be able to control it yourself, and then have whatever else you want to do the encoding.
Next question
comes in from Idris Haji in Fairfax, Virginia. What are your hopes or expectations of Apple's newly announced audio recording capture locally feature? Will this encourage more iPad use with recording podcasts or Zoom applications? And he has a link there.
Alex?
Yeah, we're pretty excited about this, actually. We're looking at building kits around this process. So this is the iPad is able to do audio and video locally. So you can jump on whatever you want. The key is that it's not part of an application. It's just saying, I can use whatever app I want, but at the OS level, it's going to grab onto that video and audio and save it to an iCloud account. So we're pretty excited about this being able to, and it also has an audio selector so that you can select different mics. We think we're going to be testing soon. I'm going to have one of these iPads get lit up for this. We want to test an MV6 with the iPad, and that may be our go-to send a kit out to somebody, a $230 iPad and a $150 mic, and that's our little kit that we can send to someone for remote contribution, and we think that could be a really interesting solution.
Courtney?
Yeah, I guess nobody's really used this yet. I don't know if it hasn't shipped yet, but it'd be interesting.
It's in developer beta, not even public beta yet. Okay, so it's developer beta, which means
to get access
very
to
sharp edges.
So we don't know then if it for recording double enders, if it records a time-stamped file so that you can.
We don't think it does. So you'd have to realign it. Yeah.
Okay. So and if it's recording locally and you're in a Zoom meeting, does it record both sides of the conversation or just your side?
We don't think so. We don't know yet. But what we would typically do there is we would record the Zoom thing, and then we'd have everybody else's double ends, and we just line them up. We use
they'll record ISOs of themselves. In other words.
Yeah, we did this with Skype 15 years ago, maybe more, 20 years ago, where we would. Everybody record their own local version. They didn't have the return version, but what we did is we made sure to record the whole program, and then at the beginning we just lined everybody up, and then there was a little bit of I guess the technical term is zhuzhing that was required to get it all to work to pull it together. But that's how we put it together.
A little nudge here, and then
the problem is that the time code isn't as useful as it would sound because of the delay between things. So. There's a delay that we have in this show.
Well, you have to have a common time code between the two, so you have to decide on a common time code source, right. Either GPS or something that is universal.
Yeah.
Interesting. It's fascinating for me, and I'm really looking forward to this getting continuously developed. I'm a part of a couple of cold read groups, and it's really difficult to be performing with somebody else in a double-ended system and have any kind of significant delay between them. It really throws off the actor's timing to be able to hit cues and interact and talk over each other when necessary. So if this system, Apple on both ends and maybe an iCloud center or maybe a Zoom center, who knows, can manage to do double-ended recording with very little or no latency and create an acceptable place, I think it's going to transform a lot of performance rehearsal type spaces. I think it may end up becoming hugely popular. Theater groups, podcasters, there's just a lot of people who want to do audio style work and need to have interaction, lots of interaction. Our show here, one of the reasons I think it does so well is because we have a lot of interaction between panelists, between us and the audience, between the questioners. And I think that makes it much more compelling to listen to, and I think this has a potential to do the same thing. So it is alpha, not even beta yet, but it's got a lot of promise, and I'm really keeping my eyes on it. Next question.
Next question comes in from Paul Paul Wallace, considering a $1,099 wooden camera elite handheld accessory system, what Sony camera would you recommend integrating with it for optimal performance, balance, and overall workflow in a professional setting?
Yeah, this is another News Shooter article, and News Shooter does a pretty good job of looking at these things and developing it. They've developed a very good reputation among mobile journalists and things like that, and those people have very high standards for their tools to make them work well. I have never worked with that much wooden camera stuff because I'm in other ecosystems. I know Alex has a little bit more. Alex, do you have experience with this kind of thing? Have you looked at it?
Venice 2. That's what you're looking for. I mean, you didn't tell us a price. I mean, if you want the best Sony, if you're saying you want to integrate with the best Sony camera, Venice 2. I mean, I think I don't know why we're even having this conversation.
Do you have a large house and can you mortgage it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great camera. I was just shooting on it recently, and it's got great sensor. It does really well. So, it really, again, and you have to decide what your requirements are. So, do you want it to be super lightweight? Do you want it to be larger? I mean, probably my favorite Sony camera is the FX6 under $10,000. I like the form factor. I like working with it. It's light. It's easy to work with. But they shot the Creator on the FX3 because it was even lighter, and it let them use even lighter components. I'm using an FX30 here, and because of the autofocus, and it's less expensive, and so on and so forth. And so it just really depends on your what you're trying to achieve in that process. So I don't know if it's when you're trying to balance it, you got to really think about the exact mission that you have, and then you can figure out what goes 50% more than that. Like, so, if you take what you're trying to do, we do that whole 40 to 60%, that's the cameras as well. So whatever the camera is, it should be able to do twice at least what you want to do right now, and then buy that. And again, I've used the Burano. I don't think I've used, from the Sony line, but I'm almost all the other Sonys. I got a big Sony over my shoulder. You can't really see. I got to light it up better, but I've had lots and lots of Sony cameras. But they're all different, and they all have a different mission. And Sony makes so many. That's one of the big challenges with Sony, is that if you've got an itch to scratch, they've got a camera to scratch it with. Like that.
Courtney.
Yeah, as long as you're going with the Sony Venice, go for the Rialto package, and that way you just separate the optical block, and it's really lightweight. And you can put the recorder on your back in a backpack with a short cable between the two. The extension for the Venice, that came from the F950, which is behind me. You can actually pull the optical block out, and the reason you could do that was because the F950 made the motion control arm shake. So when the motion control arm moved quickly, ILM came back to them. They're like, "Well, that's not going to work," because what happened was when they were doing the original ones with the 700, the motion control arm shake. Like, we just need the sensor. So can we have a cable? I worked with those early on when we shot Borg 4D in 3D, because to do 3D, they had to have a rig to mount the two sensors next to each other and adjust the interocular distance. And so to do handheld, the cameraman had two of the recorders on his back, or a separate camera assistant running within 5 feet of him with the recorder.
And then Sony figured out maybe we should then they made it a little bit bigger, and then they had these P1s. The P1s were the ones that they really used for 3D, which were like little boxes that didn't have any recording in them. That was back in the day. I bought.
The other thing I wanted to point out about this particular thing that he pointed to is you're holding the camera out in front of you. Now, this picture here looks like he has it on an easy rig, because there's a cable here attached to the top. And if that's not an antenna, it looks like he's got an easy rig harness on. So it's supporting the weight, because it gets quite tiring. I don't know if you've ever done holding something out in front of you like this for long takes. And, with digital cameras, you can have a 30-minute take.
I have to. We recently did a show with an easy rig and a Ronin 4D, and I just felt like that's the that's the kit that I want next. Like is a the chicken head with a something like and you can just last, because the big thing is we had a Steadicam in the other room, so we had a Steadicam operator and the chicken head, and the challenge was with the Steadicam is every time it did things that we couldn't do with the Ronin, but as soon as you pull the operator off the stand, you're on a clock, right? Like how long can that operator just sit there holding that Steadicam? Whereas with the cinema, the Ronin 40, you just, okay, well, whenever you're ready, like we'll just sit here with because there's very little weight put on them. It's an incredible combination. I'm saving up after I finish my studio. That's my next big purchase.
I would just be careful, too, if you don't have your camera yet, Paul, and you're just buying this, their accessories tend to be a little bit expensive. I mean, here's the Arri Alexa 35 kit, and it's over $2,500, and it's not going to fit any other camera. This isn't a Tinker Toy rig where you can kind of adapt it. You're buying a particular wooden camera system, in this case, the Elite accessory system for a particular camera, and in my experience, if you decide, if you're happy and you get the right camera and you're good for 5 or 6 years, great, no problem. But when you go to sell it, they don't usually give you a lot of extra money on top of the camera for the accessory system that goes with it. At least that's been my experience. They depreciate out because they're so specific.
What I would say is, though, that we're kind of answering this question backwards, which is that you don't look at the wooden camera thing and go, what do I put in the wooden camera thing? You think about the camera that you have, and then you start figuring out what rig. You just start building around it.
Yeah, and so figure the camera out first, and then everything else is dependent on that. Next question.
Next one comes in from Rajan Chandil in Los Angeles. Podcast audio from SM7B microphone to cameras, Rodecaster, or MixPre 6 preferred?
Alex, what's your preference?
It depends. I generally would never do a SM7B to a camera because the preamps on the cameras stink. I wouldn't want to have the camera be the first thing that saw a mic unless I was in a corner. So it's not that I've never done it, but I generally am not gonna. I find that anything that you're getting with the camera, the preamps are generally just trash. I would strongly of the ones that you just gave us there, I would strongly lean towards the MixPre myself. I've had Sound Devices equipment for the last 20 years, and I have a MixPre 3. I don't have a MixPre 6 because I have a lot of MixPre 3s, and I've got a Scorpio, and in all cases the preamps are very, very quiet. And overall, the routing and everything else, and the interface, I find more pleasing than the Zoom interfaces.
Courtney.
Well, I kind of like the Rodecaster Pro, especially if you're doing a podcast, because it has a lot more features designed for podcasters. And it does have preamps that can handle the SM7B. It has enough gain to not bring up noise or anything, and that particular microphone has enough gain that you don't need any kind of FET head or cloud lifter. And because it has easy to access slider pots where you can just put your finger down by feel and tell which unit you're on, and it's got mute buttons on it. It's got a lot of features that you don't have in that MixPre. MixPre is probably a better field recorder for doing that kind of stuff. But if you're not going in the field, or you're not going to have a separate sound mixer who's handling the mix while you're hosting that podcast, I think a Rodecaster Pro would do. Pro 2, which is what I'm using right now, would be a little bit better for doing podcasts with, because it's a little easier to operate. Plus, you have the ability to have those pre-recorded sounds on pads. You can play an intro, play an outro, do that kind of stuff easily off of that Rodecaster Pro. Plus, it has a lot of, if you need them, and I'm not using them at all, a lot of, dynamics control and that you can implement on each of those mic preamps. And it does great mix minus as well. So there you go.
Harshid?
I got to feel it at Infocom to Sound Devices, and it's really, really sturdy, I would say. It's, again, are you going to be mobile recording, or are you going to sit down with the Rode stuff?
Let's go to one more question.
Last one comes in from Douglas Carmichael. Alex, you talked about the use of an iPad as a remote kit for contribution to a production. With the improvements in the latest iPad OS, could you consider it a solid mobile satellite for a desktop Mac and 16-inch MacBook Pro for audio work.
Alex, what's your opinion?
Maybe. I still think that I try to use my iPad as much as I can, just because I don't like the laptop that much, and but I still have a laptop in my bag almost all the time. So I almost always travel with the laptop and my iPad. It hasn't quite got to the point where I feel like I can do everything. There's always something there, and even little things like I don't like the way the email works on my iPad. So I think that's there's still lots of little things that keep me on the iPad or keep me on the desktop. A lot of it, I believe, is just because I've been using laptops for so long. I think there's probably things that I could do on the iPad, and I just don't like it. It's just not something that I'm comfortable with. But I've done more and more. I would say that I spend a lot of time on a desktop because I don't have to leave the office very often. But when I'm on the road, I probably use my iPad 80% of the time, and then just kind of sigh and pull out my laptop to do a couple things, and then I go back to my iPad.
Courtney, real quick.
Not a lot of interface options on that iPad. You're going to have to plug a hub into it to take, a mixer in or a microphone in and still keep it powered and take a camera in. Those are all going to be kind of problematic if you're not using the built-in cameras in the unit itself or the built-in microphones or Bluetooth to connect to it. So lack of its I/O, I think, would put the desktop Mac or the MacBook Pro portable ahead of it to use as a satellite contribution device.
That's our show for today. Thank you so much for being here. We truly appreciate it, just like we appreciate everybody who makes this show possible, and that includes our incredible group of viewer/joiners who have come and been a part of office hours, our producers who ask the questions and put in exactly what drives our show every day. So thank you so much for your questions and your participation. To the panelists who show up every day to answer questions, thank you very, very much. That is how this works. Without those two core constituencies, we couldn't put anything on the air. But on top of those two visible constituencies, there's also the back-end crew, those quiet technological geniuses in some cases, and extraordinarily talented people who make the back end of this happen. There's an army of them. Please, if you have time, watch the credits as they go by, and you'll see some of the names of some of the people who help make this possible every day. Our Traversal for today, it looks to me like if we had been around to ask these people in person, we would have had to travel 50,000 miles. That's 80,000 kilometers, 395 million. Bananas for scale. We'll see you tomorrow.
All right.
I was in the extra. I couldn't figure out why the chat wasn't working, and I was just looking through it, and I realized I was in extra hour chat.
So you were in last night.
Nothing was. I was like, how can no one be chatting this morning? I was thrown off, and then about 10 minutes ago, I was like, oh right, I'm in the
How did after hours go last night? Did everything
was good?
Yeah, good.
Very good. All right, thanks.
See you all mañana.
See ya.
Howdy-o day. Bye-bye.
Oh, that's right. Howdy-o day tomorrow.